Have you ever noticed that the moment things start going well, you suddenly feel the urge to break something? It is a quiet, almost invisible tension that lives in the space between your success and your comfort. You finally get the job you wanted. The relationship starts to feel stable. You finally hit a streak of healthy habits that make you feel light. And then, without warning, you find yourself staying up until 3 a.m. for no reason, picking a senseless fight with someone you love, or ignoring the very emails that would move your life forward. Why do we do this? Why does the human mind seem to have a built-in stop button for happiness? It feels like there is a ghost in the machine, a hidden version of yourself that is terrified of the very things you claim to want. This isn't about being lazy, and it isn't about lacking willpower. It is something much deeper. Something that acts like an internal thermostat for how much goodness you are actually allowed to feel before the system decides it's getting too hot. Today, we are going to look at that thermostat. We are going to understand why you sabotage your own peace and how to finally stop being your own most effective enemy. You might recognize this feeling as a waiting for the other shoe to drop. When life is difficult, you know how to survive. You are practiced at struggle. You understand the geography of not enough. But when things become easy, when the good times arrive, a strange and heavy anxiety begins to brew in the pit of your stomach. You feel like an imposter in your own joy. You tell yourself that this is too good to be true, and because you believe it's a lie, you subconsciously look for ways to make the reality match your internal expectation of struggle. It shows up in the smallest ways. It's the sudden urge to check your ex's social media right when your current partner is being kind to you. It's the decision to spend money you don't have right after you finally saved up a comfortable cushion. You aren't doing these things because you are bad or stupid. You're doing them because your brain is trying to return you to a baseline that feels familiar. To the brain, familiar equals safe, even if that familiar state is actually miserable. When you step outside that zone of familiarity, into the sunlight of success, your internal alarm system goes off. It screams that you're in uncharted territory. It tells you you don't belong here. And so, you begin the slow, methodical process of tearing down the progress you've made, just so you can feel the relief of being back where you think you belong, in the struggle. It is a heartbreaking loop where you become the architect of your own disappointment, over and over again. This pattern is rarely a sudden explosion. It is more like a slow leak in a tire. You start by skipping 1 gym session, then 2. You tell yourself it's just a break, but deep down there is a rhythmic quality to it. You are decelerating. You are putting on the brakes because the speed of your progress is starting to feel frightening. This is the upper limit in action. Every one of us has a specific threshold for how much love, success, and creativity we can handle. When we exceed that threshold, we go into a state of psychological panic. We create problems to bring ourselves back down to a level where we feel in control. This invisible ceiling dictates the quality of your life more than your talent or your bank account ever will. If your internal ceiling is set low, you will find a way to stay beneath it no matter how many opportunities come your way. Think about the times you've been on the verge of a breakthrough. Did you suddenly get sick? Did you get distracted by a minor drama? Did you suddenly lose interest in the project that was finally working? These aren't coincidences. This is a rhythmic, repeating cycle of self-regulation. Your mind is trying to protect you from the danger of being too happy, because happiness feels like a height you might fall from. To avoid the fall, you simply choose to stay on the ground. The most painful part of this cycle isn't the failure itself, it's the weight of the repetition. Every time you sabotage yourself, you add a layer of evidence to the story that you aren't the kind of person who succeeds. After 10, 20, or 50 rounds of this, the emotional accumulation becomes a crushing burden. You start to feel a deep, soul-weary exhaustion. You stop trusting yourself. When you set a new goal, a part of you scoffs because it knows the saboteur is already waiting at the finish line with a tripwire. This accumulation creates a sense of profound hopelessness. You look at others who seem to move through life with ease, and you assume they have a secret or a level of discipline you were born without. But the truth is, you are just carrying more emotional weight. Your backpack is full of every time you let yourself down, and that weight makes every new step feel twice as hard as it should be. You feel a sense of heavy resonance every time you fail. It feels familiar, like a sad song you've heard 1,000 times. This heaviness makes you want to stop trying altogether. You think, why bother building the house if I'm just going to burn it down anyway? This is where the true danger lies, not in the sabotage itself, but in the belief that the sabotage is who you are. It isn't. It's just a mechanism. But as long as you carry that weight without understanding why it's there, you will remain tired. You will remain stuck. In our culture, we have a very specific way of talking about this. We call it laziness. We call it lack of discipline. We tell ourselves that we just need to hustle harder or get our act together. But self-blame is actually a secondary form of self-sabotage. When you yell at yourself for failing, you are actually distracting yourself from the real reason you failed. It is much easier to believe you are lazy than it is to admit you are terrified. Laziness is a character flaw you can complain about, but terror is a deep, primal vulnerability. It requires you to look at your past, your upbringing, and your deepest insecurities. We use self-criticism as a shield. If I am the one calling myself a failure, then no one else can surprise me with that label. It's a way of maintaining control. We live in a society that fetishizes productivity, so when we fall short, we immediately reach for the whip. We think that if we are just mean enough to ourselves, we will finally change. But you cannot hate yourself into a version of yourself that you love. It doesn't work. Think about how it feels internally when you're in a cycle of self-blame. It's a loud, buzzing noise in the back of your head. This noise is so loud that it drowns out the quiet, subtle signals of your intuition. You are treating the symptom, not the disease. The disease isn't a lack of effort. The disease is a profound lack of inner safety. You are sabotaging because you feel unsafe, and then you blame yourself, which makes you feel even more unsafe. The loop tightens, the walls get closer, and the stick figure in your mind just sits there, paralyzed, wondering why it can't just be normal. To understand why this is happening, let's look at a metaphor: the broken scale. Imagine your nervous system is like a scale designed to balance your emotional load. For many of us, especially those who grew up in chaotic or high-pressure environments, our scales were calibrated in a world of heavy emotions: stress, criticism, neglect. Because that was your environment, your scale considers heavy and painful to be the 0 point. It feels balanced only when things are hard. Now, imagine that life starts to get light. You experience joy, ease, and success. On your internal scale, lightness feels like an error. It feels like the scale is tipped too far in one direction. Your nervous system doesn't perceive this lightness as good. It perceives it as unstable. It feels like being at the top of a very tall ladder with no handles. The psychological mechanism here is actually your brain trying to recalibrate the scale back to the heavy 0 point. It triggers self-sabotage to create a heavy event, a failure, an argument, a mistake, to bring the scale back to the balance of struggle that it recognizes. This is your upper limit. This isn't just a metaphor, it's a physiological reality. Your body has a comfort zone for neurochemicals like cortisol and dopamine. If you spend your life bathed in the cortisol of stress, a sudden surge of peace feels like a foreign invasion. Your brain will literally manufacture a crisis just to get its hit of cortisol back, because that is what it knows how to process. You aren't broken. Your scale is just calibrated to a different world, a world you are no longer living in, but one your body still remembers. You are fighting a war against a ghost, using a map of a place you've already left. I want you to take a breath and really hear this. You are not a failure for sabotaging your progress. You are not self-destructive by nature. You are self-protective by habit. Everything you have done to hold yourself back, the procrastination, the pushing people away, the doubt, it was all an attempt by your younger self to keep you safe from a world that felt too big or too dangerous. It is okay to let go of the anger you have toward yourself. That anger is just more weight on the scale. When you realize that your sabotage is actually a misguided bodyguard, you can stop fighting it. You can look at that part of yourself with a little bit of compassion. You can say, I see you're trying to protect me, but I am safe now. I can handle this much joy. Lower the pressure. You don't need to be perfect today. You don't need to solve your whole life in this moment. The goal isn't to never sabotage again. The goal is to notice it happening and give yourself a little grace. When you stop the self-blame, the noise in your head starts to quiet down, and in that silence, you can finally start to hear the truth. You are allowed to be here. You are allowed to have good things. You are allowed to be happy without waiting for the end. Now, we need to change how we look at that upper limit ceiling. Instead of seeing it as a wall that stops you, I want you to start seeing it as a signal. When you feel that familiar urge to sabotage, when you feel that sudden spike of anxiety right after a win, that is a sign that you are growing. It is a sign that you have reached the edge of your current comfort zone and are about to expand it. The sabotage isn't a sign that you should stop. It's a sign that you are successfully moving into a bigger life. It's like the growing pains you felt as a child. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's a necessary part of the process. You are stretching your nervous system's capacity to hold more goodness. We need to reframe our identity. You aren't someone who always messes up. You are someone who is learning to tolerate success. This shift in language changes everything. When you mess up, you can now say, "Oh, I've reached my current limit. That's interesting. Let me see if I can stay here for just 5 minutes longer before I pull the lever." Awareness is the first step towards moving the ceiling higher. You start to notice the physical sensations of the upper limit. Maybe it's a tightness in your throat or a sudden boredom with your goals. When you notice it, you don't have to act on it. You can just observe it. You can stand at the ceiling, look through the glass, and realize that the world on the other side isn't actually dangerous. It's just new. And you are capable of learning how to live in new. You are building a new floor, not just hitting a ceiling. Each time you resist the urge to sabotage, you are thickening that floor, making it stable enough to hold the bigger version of you. So, how do we practically raise the ceiling? How do we stop the stick figure from pulling the lever? First, we must stop forcing. Most of us try to fix ourselves with more discipline, but if your problem is that you feel unsafe, more discipline just feels like more pressure. It makes the bodyguard in your brain even more alert. Instead of pushing harder, try moving slower. If you have a big goal, break it into such small pieces that they don't trigger your internal alarm system. You want to sneak past your upper limit, not crash through it. Second, you must notice the tension. Throughout your day, check in with your body. When something good happens, someone gives you a compliment, you finish a task, or you have a peaceful moment, how does it feel? Do you immediately try to balance it by thinking of a problem? When you catch yourself doing that, just name it. Say, "I am hitting my upper limit." Don't judge it, just name it. This takes the power away from the subconscious habit and puts it back into your conscious mind. Finally, you must allow the expansion. This is the hardest part. It's the practice of sitting with the goodness without doing anything to ruin it. When you feel that urge to check your phone, to pick a fight, or to procrastinate, try to sit still for just 2 minutes. Breathe into the discomfort of things being too good. Tell your nervous system, "It is safe to feel this way. I can handle this much ease." This isn't about hustle, it's about capacity. You are like a balloon being blown up. If you blow it up too fast, it pops. But if you add a little air at a time, the rubber stretches. It becomes capable of holding more. Your life is the same. You are stretching your capacity for joy, one small, uncomfortable moment at a time. Stop looking for the giant leap that will change everything. Look for the small expansion that you can actually sustain. What is one good thing you can allow yourself to fully enjoy today without apologizing for it or waiting for it to end? Start there. Just one thing. I want you to imagine a version of your life where the upper limit is no longer a ceiling, but a horizon. In this future, you wake up and you don't feel that immediate clench of anxiety. You don't look for things to worry about. When you see a project succeeding, you feel a sense of quiet, steady satisfaction instead of a frantic need to move on to the next stressor. Picture yourself in a relationship where you feel completely seen and loved, and instead of pushing it away, you lean into it. You feel the warmth of it like sunlight on your skin. You are no longer performing to be worthy of it. You simply exist within it. You have reached a state where peace feels like home. In this state, your mind is a quiet place. The noise of self-blame has faded into a distant hum that you no longer pay attention to. You have a deep, unshakable trust in yourself. You know that if things go wrong, you can handle it. But more importantly, you know that if things go right, you can handle that too. You are no longer afraid of your own light. This isn't about having $1 million or a perfect life. It's about the internal feeling of belonging in the good times. It's the feeling of standing in the center of your success and thinking, yes, this is where I am supposed to be. This version of you isn't a different person. It's just you without the bodyguard constantly trying to pull you back into the shadows. It is a life of expansion where every win is met with an open heart instead of a closed fist. This is possible for you. It's not a fairy tale. It's the result of the slow, gentle work of raising your ceiling, one day at a time. Now, let's be honest. This journey isn't a straight line up. There will be days when you pull the lever. There will be weeks when you go back into the default mode and sabotage everything you've built. You will stay up late, you will skip the gym, and you will say the mean thing you promised yourself you'd never say again. And that is okay. Healing is non-linear. Every time you fail at raising your ceiling, you aren't starting back at zero. You are starting from a place of more awareness than you had before. Even the act of noticing that you sabotaged yourself is a massive win. In the past, you did it unconsciously. Now, you see it. That seeing is the wedge that will eventually break the cycle. Don't let a setback become a reason to give up. If you fall back below your ceiling, just gently stand back up. Don't beat yourself up for being human. Your nervous system has been calibrated for years, maybe decades, to stay in the struggle. You can't expect it to change overnight. Normalize the slips. Expect them. When they happen, say, there I am again. My bodyguard is having a busy day. Let's try again tomorrow. The goal is progress, not perfection. If you can stay in the goodness for 51% of the time, you are winning. If you can handle 1% more joy this month than you did last month, you are a success. This is a long game. It's doing its best to keep you safe in a world that it doesn't quite understand yet. You have spent a long time being your own toughest critic. Maybe it's time to try being your own most patient friend. The upper limit is real, but it is not a life sentence. It is just a threshold. And like every threshold, it is meant to be crossed. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to be successful. And most importantly, you are allowed to be at peace. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about a time you noticed your own upper limit. Sharing these moments helps all of us realize we aren't alone in this. We are all just trying to figure out how to stand in the light. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take a breath, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.